Have you ever felt abandoned, forgotten, or treated unfairly? This story will tear you apart, awakening the deepest corners of your soul. Take this unexpected journey, where family secrets explode and harsh truths are revealed. You will be amazed, moved, and even outraged. Don't just watch, feel, think, and share your story. You are not alone. The sprawling emerald lawns of suburban Seattle held a secret, a silent testament to years of unspoken imbalance. In the Johnson household, nestled amidst towering pines and meticulously manicured hedges, young Alex lived in the perpetual shadow of his radiant younger sister, Amy. From the moment he could grasp the concept of fairness, Alex felt the scales of justice tip precariously, irrevocably, in Amy's favor. Amy was a supernova, her presence a dazzling spectacle that consumed every ounce of parental attention. Her birthday parties were legendary, extravagant affairs that transformed their backyard into a whimsical wonderland. Bouncy castles soared. Face painters transformed giggling children into fantastical creatures, and even a miniature petting zoo grazed on their meticulously trimmed lawn. Alex's birthdays, in stark contrast, were subdued affairs. A simple cake and a handful of friends, a constant stinging reminder of his second-class status. The disparity extended far beyond birthdays. Amy's wardrobe was a kaleidoscope of vibrant hues, designer labels adorning every piece, while Alex's consisted of hand-me-downs, faded and worn, or budget-friendly finds that screamed discount. The unspoken message was clear. Amy was the prized possession, Alex, an afterthought. Even the simple act of acquiring a bicycle became a battleground, a microcosm of the larger power dynamics at play. Alex, driven by a fierce sense of independence, had meticulously saved his allowance, each dollar a hard-won victory. He had his eye on a sleek silver mountain bike, a symbol of freedom and adventure. But when Amy caught wind of his plans, a single petulant whine was all it took. Suddenly, a gleaming top-of-the-line bike, complete with all the bells and whistles, materialized in their driveway, Amy's name emblazoned across the frame. Alex's hard-earned savings remained untouched, a bitter reminder of his powerlessness. The sting of injustice was a constant companion, a subtle yet pervasive ache that colored his childhood. It manifested in the way his parents' eyes lit up when Amy entered a room, the way their voices softened when they spoke to her. It was in the casual dismissal of his achievements, the way his victories were brushed aside as if they were mere trifles. One particularly vivid memory seared itself into Alex's mind. It was the annual school science fair, a competition he had poured his heart and soul into. His project, a meticulously crafted solar-powered robot, was a testament to his ingenuity and dedication. He had spent countless hours tinkering in his makeshift workshop, fueled by a burning desire to prove his worth. The day of the fair arrived, and Alex stood proudly beside his creation, his heart pounding with anticipation. But as the judges approached, his parents were nowhere to be seen. He scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for their familiar faces, but they were conspicuously absent. Later that evening, they breezed in, their faces flushed with excitement, regaling him with tales of Amy's dance recital, completely oblivious to his disappointment. Amy was simply radiant, his mother gushed, her eyes sparkling. She was the star of the show. Alex's heart sank. "But what about my science fair?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. His father chuckled, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Oh, that. We were a bit tied up with Amy's recital. You know how important these things are to her." The words hung in the air, a heavy, suffocating blanket of indifference. Alex retreated to his room, the tears he had held back finally spilling over. He stared at his reflection, his eyes filled with a profound sense of loneliness. In that moment, he understood the harsh reality of his existence. He was an afterthought, a mere footnote in the grand narrative of Amy's life. The halls of Oakwood High echoed with the same discordant melody that resonated at home, a symphony of favoritism that drowned out Alex's accomplishments. Amy's presence was a beacon, a radiant spotlight that drew the attention of teachers and parents alike, while Alex's achievements faded into the background, like whispers in a hurricane. He excelled in academics, his mind a sharp instrument honed by relentless dedication. The math club, where he tackled complex equations with effortless grace, the perfect report cards, a testament to his unwavering commitment, and the regional science fair victory, a triumph of ingenuity and perseverance, all were met with a lukewarm reception from his parents, their focus perpetually fixed on Amy's endeavors. "Another A?" his father would say, a hint of indifference in his voice, as if it were a mere formality. "That's good, Alex. Keep it up." His mother, her eyes glued to her phone, would offer a perfunctory smile. "That's nice, dear." Their words were empty, devoid of the genuine pride he craved. They were mere echoes, fading into the cacophony of Amy's triumphs. A B+ on Amy's report card, however, was a cause for celebration, a grand spectacle that transformed their living room into a makeshift party venue. Balloons adorned the walls, a celebratory cake graced the dining table, and a brand new phone, the latest model, was bestowed upon Amy as a reward for her hard work. "See, Amy?" his mother would beam, her eyes sparkling with pride. All that effort paid off. Alex watched from the sidelines, his heart sinking with each passing moment. The injustice was a bitter pill to swallow, a stark reminder of his second-class status. The hunger for recognition gnawed at Alex, a relentless craving for the validation that seemed perpetually out of reach. He yearned for a moment in the spotlight, a chance to prove his worth, to break free from the shadows that enveloped him. One particular incident etched itself into Alex's memory, a painful reminder of the chasm that separated him from his parents' affections. It was the annual school awards ceremony, a night dedicated to celebrating academic excellence. Alex had been nominated for the prestigious Scholar of the Year award, a recognition of his outstanding academic achievements. He had prepared a heartfelt speech, a testament to his passion for learning, his unwavering dedication to his studies. He had envisioned his parents in the audience, their faces beaming with pride, their applause echoing through the auditorium. But as he stood on the stage, his heart pounding with anticipation, his parents were nowhere to be seen. He scanned the crowd, his eyes searching for their familiar faces, but they were conspicuously absent. Later that evening, they arrived home, their faces flushed with excitement, their voices filled with the echoes of Amy's latest performance. "Amy was simply magnificent," his mother gushed, her eyes sparkling. "She was the star of the show." Alex's heart sank. "But what about my awards ceremony?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. His father chuckled, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Oh, that. We were a bit tied up with Amy's performance. You know how important these things are to her." The words hung in the air, a heavy, suffocating blanket of indifference. Alex retreated to his room, the tears he had held back finally spilling over. He stared at his reflection, his eyes filled with a profound sense of loneliness. In that moment, he understood the harsh reality of his existence. He was an afterthought, a mere footnote in the grand narrative of Amy's life. Harvard's prestigious summer program was Alex's ticket to validation, a beacon of hope in the sea of indifference that surrounded him. It was a chance to prove his worth, to showcase his intellectual prowess on a national stage. But even this triumph, this hard-won victory, was overshadowed by Amy's upcoming recital, a mere local event that somehow managed to eclipse his monumental achievement. The acceptance letter from Harvard, a crisp, official document that symbolized years of relentless dedication, was met with a lukewarm reception from his parents. "That's nice, Alex," his father said, his eyes glued to his phone. "Harvard, huh? That's quite a drive." His mother, her attention fixated on Amy's recital, costume, offered a distracted nod. "Just make sure you don't fall behind on your chores while you're gone." Their indifference was a crushing blow, a stark reminder of his place in their eyes. He was an afterthought, a mere footnote in the grand narrative of Amy's life. The day of his departure arrived, and as Alex boarded the plane, A pang of loneliness echoed through him. He glanced out the window, his eyes searching for his parents' familiar faces, but they were conspicuously absent. Their attention was consumed by Amy's performance, a local recital that somehow held more weight than his acceptance into one of the most prestigious academic programs in the country. The flight to Boston was a blur, a haze of disappointment and resentment. He arrived at Harvard, the hallowed halls of academia, a stark contrast to the emotional void he carried within him. He threw himself into his studies, immersing himself in the world of intellectual exploration, but the gnawing sense of abandonment never truly subsided. Conversely, Amy's graduation, marked by average grades and a decision to forego college, was met with thunderous applause and a brand new car, a gleaming testament to her parents' unwavering favoritism. "Amy knows what she wants," his father declared, his voice booming with pride. "She's always been independent." His mother nodded in agreement, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "She's not afraid to forge her own path." Alex watched from the sidelines, his heart sinking with each passing moment. The injustice was a bitter pill to swallow, a stark testament to the skewed priorities of his parents. One evening, as Alex was studying in his dorm room, he received a call from his mother. "How's Harvard treating you, dear?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of forced enthusiasm. "It's fine," Alex replied, his voice flat. "I'm learning a lot." "That's good," she said. "Amy's recital is this weekend. You should try to catch it online." Alex's heart sank. "I have a final exam," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Oh, right," she said, her voice dismissive. "Well, we'll miss you." The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Alex feeling more isolated than ever. He stared out the window, the twinkling lights of Cambridge a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped him. The injustice was a bitter pill to swallow, a stark testament to the skewed priorities of his parents. He was an afterthought, a mere footnote in the grand narrative of Amy's life. Grandpa Johnson's will, a document that held the power to disrupt the delicate balance of the Johnson family, dropped like a bombshell, shattering the fragile facade of normalcy that had masked years of unspoken favoritism. The news of Alex's inheritance of $500,000 ignited a firestorm, a tempest of outrage and resentment that threatened to tear the family apart. "This is absurd!" Mr. Johnson thundered, his face flushed with anger. "How could your grandfather do this?" Mrs. Johnson, her voice trembling with indignation, echoed her husband's sentiments. "It's completely unfair. Amy needs that money more than Alex does." Their words were a stark testament to their unwavering favoritism, a blatant declaration that Alex was undeserving of his grandfather's generosity. They deemed the inheritance unfair, a misplaced reward for a son they had consistently overlooked, a son they had deemed unworthy of their affection. Their attempts to guilt-trip Alex, to paint him as an ungrateful and selfish child, were met with resistance. Alex, fueled by years of pent-up resentment, stood his ground, refusing to relinquish what was rightfully his. "I'm not giving up my inheritance," he declared, his voice firm and unwavering. "Grandpa wanted me to have it, and I intend to honor his wishes." His words were met with a barrage of accusations, a torrent of emotional manipulation designed to break his resolve. "You're being selfish, Alex," his mother cried, her voice laced with tears. "You're tearing this family apart." "After everything we've done for you," his father added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is how you repay us?" They recounted every instance where they had sacrificed for him, every time they had gone out of their way to make his life easier. But their words rang hollow, their arguments devoid of any genuine concern for his well-being. "You've never done anything for me," Alex retorted, his voice trembling with anger. "You've always favored Amy. You've always made me feel like I'm not good enough." The words hung in the air, a raw and painful acknowledgement of the chasm that separated him from his parents' affections. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension and resentment. "We're your parents," his mother said, her voice barely a whisper. "We love you." "If you loved me," Alex replied, his voice filled with bitterness, "you wouldn't be trying to take away what's rightfully mine." The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Alex feeling more isolated than ever. He retreated to his room, the tears he had held back finally spilling over. He stared at his reflection, his eyes filled with a profound sense of betrayal. The inheritance, a symbol of his grandfather's love and support, had become a weapon, a tool used to expose the deep-seated flaws in his family's dynamics. He was no longer the invisible child, the forgotten son. He was a threat, a force to be reckoned with, and he was determined to fight for his right to be recognized, to be valued, to be loved. Mr. Johnson's attempt to manipulate the will, to divert Alex's inheritance to Amy, was a blatant act of betrayal, a callous disregard for his father's wishes, and a stark demonstration of his unwavering favoritism. Alex, feeling cornered and betrayed, desperately needed an ally, a beacon of hope in the storm of familial discord. He turned to his grandmother, Eleanor, a woman of unwavering integrity and fierce independence. Grandma Eleanor, a matriarch of the old school, was a force to be reckoned with. Her eyes, though aged, still held a spark of youthful fire, and her voice, though softened by time, still commanded attention. She had always been a champion of fairness, a staunch defender of the underdog. When Alex confided in her about his father's treachery, her reaction was swift and decisive. "That's outrageous," she exclaimed, her voice laced with indignation. "I won't allow him to get away with this." She was appalled by her son's actions, his blatant disregard for his father's wishes, his willingness to sacrifice his own son for the sake of favoritism. She saw the pain in Alex's eyes, the deep-seated resentment that had festered for years, and she vowed to set things right. "Your grandfather wanted you to have that money, Alex," she said, her voice firm and reassuring, "and I'm going to make sure his wishes are honored." She wasted no time in confronting her son, her voice echoing through the Johnson household like a clarion call for justice. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her eyes blazing with anger. "How dare you try to steal from your own son?" Mr. Johnson, taken aback by his mother's ferocity, stammered a feeble excuse. "I was just trying to do what's best for Amy," he mumbled, his eyes darting away. "What's best for Amy is not your decision to make," Grandma Eleanor retorted, her voice dripping with scorn. "And what's best for Alex is that he receives what his grandfather intended for him." She didn't stop there. She rallied the Johnson siblings, her voice a clarion call for justice, exposing her son's treachery and rallying support for Alex. "We can't let him get away with this," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "We have to stand up for Alex." Her words ignited a spark of defiance within the family, a collective refusal to tolerate Mr. Johnson's blatant favoritism. The Johnson siblings, long accustomed to their brother's domineering ways, finally found their voices joining Grandma Eleanor's in a chorus of protest. "This isn't fair," one of Alex's aunts declared, her voice trembling with anger. "Alex deserves his inheritance. We can't let him manipulate the will," another uncle added, his voice firm and resolute. "We have to do what's right." Grandma Eleanor's intervention was a turning point, a moment of reckoning that shattered the illusion of familial harmony and exposed the deep-seated flaws in the Johnson family dynamics. She was a force of nature, a matriarch who refused to tolerate injustice, a champion who stood up for the underdog. Her actions ignited a spark of hope within Alex, a glimmer of light in the darkness that had enveloped him. He was no longer alone in his fight. He had an ally, a powerful advocate who was willing to stand by his side, no matter the cost. Amidst the chaos of the legal battle, a flicker of change ignited within Amy, a slow burn that gradually transformed her perception of her family and herself. She sought out Alex, her voice trembling with newfound understanding, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and determination. "Alex," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "I need to talk to you." They met in a quiet corner of a local cafe, the clinking of coffee cups and the murmur of conversations creating a backdrop to their long-overdue confrontation. Amy confessed her own struggles, her realization that the favoritism she had enjoyed throughout her life had stunted her growth, leaving her dependent and insecure. "I never realized how much it affected you," she said, her voice laced with remorse. "I was so caught up in my own little world. I never saw how much you were suffering." She admitted that she had always felt a sense of unease, a nagging feeling that she didn't deserve the constant praise and attention she received. She had always relied on her parents' approval, their validation, never learning to stand on her own 2 feet. "I've always been afraid to try anything new," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I was afraid of failing, of disappointing them." Inspired by Alex's resilience, his unwavering determination to fight for what was right, she resolved to forge her own path, to break free from the gilded cage of her parents' expectations. She realized that she had been living a lie, a carefully constructed illusion of perfection, and she was determined to dismantle it. "I want to be independent," she declared, her voice filled with newfound resolve. "I want to prove that I can make it on my own." Her words were met with a mixture of surprise and admiration from Alex. He had always seen Amy as the golden child, the embodiment of their parents' favoritism. But now he saw a different side of her, a vulnerable and courageous young woman who was determined to break free from the chains of her past. "I'm proud of you, Amy," he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "I know you can do it." Amy's transformation was not without its challenges. She faced resistance from her parents, who were reluctant to let go of their control. They tried to guilt-trip her, to manipulate her, to pull her back into their orbit. "You're being selfish, Amy," her mother cried, her voice laced with tears. "You're breaking our hearts. We just want what's best for you," her father added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But if you want to throw your life away, go right ahead." Amy stood her ground, refusing to be swayed by their emotional manipulation. She had finally found her voice, her independence, and she was not going to let anyone take it away from her. She enrolled in a community college, eager to learn and grow, to explore her own interests and passions. She took on a part-time job, eager to earn her own money, to prove that she could be self-sufficient. Her journey was not easy, but it was hers. She was no longer the pampered princess, the golden child. She was a young woman on a quest for self-discovery, a journey that would lead her to a place of strength, resilience, and independence. Mr. Johnson, unable to reconcile with Amy's newfound independence, severed ties with both his children, his heart hardened by a cocktail of anger, disappointment, and stubborn pride. He couldn't comprehend Amy's desire to break free from the gilded cage he had meticulously constructed for her, nor could he forgive Alex for challenging his authority and exposing his deep-seated favoritism. "You've both turned against me," he declared, his voice laced with bitterness, his eyes filled with a chilling emptiness. "I don't recognize you anymore." He retreated into his own world, a self-imposed exile, refusing to acknowledge the pain he had inflicted on his family. He became a ghost, a silent presence in the house, his absence more deafening than any argument. Mrs. Johnson, however, embarked on a journey of self-discovery, a painful but necessary process of introspection and healing. She sought therapy, desperate to understand the root of her favoritism, the reasons behind her blind devotion to Amy and her neglect of Alex. "I was so afraid of losing Amy," she confessed to her therapist, her voice trembling with remorse. "I thought if I didn't give her everything she wanted, she wouldn't love me anymore." She realized that her actions had not only harmed Alex, but had also stunted Amy's growth, leaving her dependent and insecure. She had been so focused on protecting Amy that she had failed to prepare her for the real world. She began to reach out to Alex, her attempts at reconciliation tentative and awkward. She apologized for her years of neglect, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "I know I can't undo the past," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "But I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me." Alex, though still wary, was touched by his mother's sincerity. He had longed for her affection for so long, and now, finally, she was reaching out to him. "I forgive you, Mom," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But it's going to take time to rebuild our relationship." The divide within the Johnson family deepened, a chasm of resentment and regret that seemed insurmountable. The house, once a haven of warmth and laughter, became a battleground, a silent testament to the family's fractured relationships. One evening, as Alex sat in the living room, his mother joined him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "Your father's still not talking to me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if he ever will." Alex reached out and took his mother's hand, his touch offering a silent reassurance. "We'll get through this, Mom," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll rebuild our family, even if it's just the two of us." The road to healing was long and arduous, but Alex and his mother were determined to walk it together. They were a fractured family, but they were not broken. They were determined to find a way to mend their relationships, to heal their wounds, and to create a new future, a future built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. Alex, armed with his inheritance, embarked on a path of healing and self-discovery, determined to transform his pain into purpose. He invested wisely, paying off his student loans and laying the groundwork for a mental health support center, a sanctuary for those who had experienced the same emotional turmoil he had endured. "I want to create a place where people feel safe and understood," he told his therapist, his voice filled with passion. "A place where they can find the support they need to heal." He poured his heart and soul into the project, meticulously planning every detail, from the calming color scheme to the comfortable furniture. He wanted to create an environment that fostered healing and growth, a haven from the chaos of the outside world. He extended a helping hand to Amy, supporting her therapy and celebrating her newfound independence. He was proud of the woman she had become, the courageous young woman who had broken free from the chains of her past. "You're an inspiration, Amy," he told her, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "You've shown me that it's never too late to change." They spent hours talking, sharing their experiences, their hopes, and their dreams. They forged a bond, a deep and unbreakable connection forged in the fires of adversity. They were no longer just siblings. They were allies, confidants, and friends. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Alex," Amy said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've been my rock, and you've been mine," Alex replied, his voice filled with warmth. "We're in this together." Their shared experiences had forged an unbreakable connection, a bond that transcended the bitterness of the past. They were a team, a united front against the challenges that life threw their way. Alex's mental health support center opened its doors, a beacon of hope in the community. He worked tirelessly, counseling clients, leading support groups, and advocating for mental health awareness. He found purpose in helping others, in guiding them on their own paths to healing. One evening, as Alex was closing up the center, he received a call from his mother. "Alex," she said, her voice trembling, "your father. He wants to see you." Alex hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't spoken to his father in months, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face him. "I'll be there," he said, his voice firm but gentle. He drove to his parents' house, his heart pounding with anticipation. He found his father sitting in the living room, his face etched with regret and sadness. "Alex," his father began, his voice barely a whisper, "I'm sorry, I've made so many mistakes." Alex sat down beside his father, his heart aching with a mixture of anger and compassion. "I know, Dad," he said, his voice soft but firm, "but it's never too late to change." They talked for hours, sharing their feelings, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and painful truths, but it was also a cathartic experience, a chance for healing and reconciliation. The path to healing was long and arduous, but Alex and his family were determined to walk it together. They were a fractured family, but they were not broken. They were determined to find a way to mend their relationships, to heal their wounds, and to create a new future, a future built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. Alex emerged from the turmoil a changed man, his spirit tempered by the trials he had faced. He had learned that family was not defined by blood, but by unwavering support and acceptance, by the bonds of love and loyalty that transcended the limitations of genetics. He had forged new connections, building a network of individuals who valued him for who he was, who saw him not as the forgotten son, but as a man of integrity, compassion, and resilience. He had found his tribe, his chosen family, a group of friends and mentors who supported his dreams and celebrated his victories. The scars of his childhood remained, etched into his soul like faded tattoos, but they were no longer wounds, but rather badges of resilience, reminders of the battles he had fought and the lessons he had learned. He had transformed his pain into purpose, his suffering into strength. He resolved to break the cycle of favoritism, to create a future where fairness and equality reigned supreme, where every child felt valued and loved, regardless of their achievements or their perceived worth. He became an advocate for those who had been marginalized, a voice for those who had been silenced. His mental health support center thrived, a beacon of hope in the community. He worked tirelessly, counseling clients, leading support groups, and educating the public about the importance of mental well-being. He became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of resilience and the transformative potential of healing. One day, as Alex was giving a lecture at a local school, he noticed a young boy sitting in the back row, his eyes filled with a familiar sadness. He recognized the look of a child who felt unseen, unheard, and unloved. After the lecture, Alex approached the boy, his heart aching with compassion. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Michael," the boy replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Michael," Alex said, his voice filled with warmth. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong, but I want you to know that you're not alone. You are seen, you are heard, and you are loved." Michael's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of sadness and relief. He had finally found someone who understood him, someone who saw him for who he was. Alex continued to mentor Michael, guiding him on his own path to healing. He became a father figure to the boy, a role model, a source of unwavering support. Years later, Alex stood at the altar, his heart filled with joy and gratitude. He was marrying the love of his life, a woman who had seen him at his worst and loved him anyway. As he looked out at the crowd, he saw Michael, now a young man, standing proudly beside him. He had broken the cycle of favoritism. He had created a future where fairness and equality reigned supreme, and he had found love, happiness, and a sense of belonging. His journey had been long and arduous, but he had emerged from the turmoil a changed man, a man of strength, resilience, and unwavering hope.